In terms of the network, we have over the course of this year onboarded 60 new members. So with thanks to Reinhardt, to Emma, to Angelina, and to Louis supporting that onboarding work. We have grown by another lab, which is the UBI Lab Kenya Artists, which have been doing some really, really great work. They've got 25 active members as artists. UBL have food. I've got a new website. Lots of things have been going on in Manchester, and that's been captured in a bit of a story. So we're going to turn that into a timeline going forward. And as many of you have been involved in the workshops and consultation, we have also produced a strategy document. So again, thanks to all the contributions and efforts that were made with that, and James turning that into the words that made it coherent and knitted it all together. And going forwards, as we have just launched, having signed off at the last monthly meetup, we have the working groups going forward, which is what was asked for from the network, for people being able to engage in things in areas of interest that are beyond while still working with the labs and as individual members. We've done, as we often do in the network, quite a lot of events this year. To point out and highlight a few, really great event around tackling homelessness with unconditional cash transfers at the start of the year with Mark Donovan, the founder of the Denver Basic Income Pilot, with Jonathan Tan, who's the co-founder and CEO of Greater Change, and with Francis Darling Pollock, who's the CEO of Greater Manchester's Mayor's Charity. We also did a really nice UBI, what could UBI do for my union with John McDonald, and a collaboration between UBI Lab Leeds, Arts, and Basic Income Ireland. There's been two further events checking in with people who are actually on the Irish Artists Pilot at the 24-month point and the 26-month point. As some of you are here on the call and were actually we, as a network, multiple members attended, submitted papers for, and presented at the BN Global Conference, which was in Bath in the UK this year. And outside of doing our own specific events, there's been lots of kind of outreach and kind of work that's been done. There's a lovely picture there of Louis speaking at the Manchester Better Business Summit. Daniel's been doing some really great work down in London, especially in kind of child poverty network and a couple of other events. Dave's been integrating, talking about UBI into the Pint of Science series of talks, which happens in Manchester and as a series nationally as well. And there's been some really great work that Reinhardt's been doing that I'll refer to in a bit more detail later. But just to give you a flavour, there's an event coming up on Monday where Reinhardt's up in Sheffield talking to the Sheffield humanists about how wealth can be rethought about. And then lots of work going on in and around that. Feeding Barnet Food Security Summit, continuing work on the trial in East Finchley down in London as well. As you may recognise the people in these photos, but Alison did more than a stint at the Green Party conference this year and managed to grab Natalie and Zach for some photo ops, which was really great. And there've been quite a lot of members within the network that have got some really good press coverage. And as we've talked about before, it's great when we get broadsheet coverage and there's national stories, but actually it's usually the point that we get kind of local coverage or topical coverage that really captures people's attention. So there's two or three examples here of Emma in Stroud, Jack, who is part of UBI Lab Sheffield, doing an article about some really great storytelling. And many of you will know Patrick Brown, so the op-ed that he did for Al Jazeera there. But there's been many others across the year that's got some really good coverage. And it's not just in the press that people have been doing outreach. So there's been quite a few podcast episodes that people have been on. UBI Lab Finland have been doing some more of their Hunome hosted sessions. There's the fantastic Towards a UBI Society Monopoly board that's been finalised and printed and produced that you can see there on that slide. And in Leeds, it's been a really great story to see the fact that the monthly meetups in person have started back up. So all credit to Reinhardt for managing to pull that off because it's great that people are meeting up once again in person and connecting and talking with each other about what they'd like to see happening in Leeds. And then there's been lots of campaigning initiatives that have happened off the back of that as well. I mentioned the UBI Lab Kenya Artists that has been established with more than 25 members. They're in the process of kind of developing a kind of website page that's going to go on the network website and setting up a profile. They've been doing lots of networking and resourcing mobilization processes in Kenya in the areas that they work with. They've developed videos or found different ways of theatre performances and storytelling, some of which they captured and screened at the BN Congress. And they've just been doing loads of really fantastic community kind of performance work and engagement, talking to people about UBI and other adjacent subjects on the ground. So thank you very much for Edwin for sending through all of that info and those photos. Um, Joe, who some of you will know as part of the UBI Lab Food, who is also known for UBI for Farmers, has done some really great work, published a really great piece of a paper with autonomy that we work with in the movement and got some really great coverage for that, some of which we helped some support from the Opus side now then, but also some broadsheet coverage and interview stuff on national radio, which is fantastic to see. And obviously, there are lots of labs that I've mentioned that are doing work, but just to, yeah, really highlight the incredible amount of progress that's been made with Andy Burnham, the Mayor's Office, Greater Manchester Combined Authority towards a pilot in Manchester this year. It's been incremental, the amount of work that's been done in the background with the meetings of not just people within those systems, but with outside and relationship building is been absolutely wonderful. And that is comprised of all sorts of fun and engaging things as well. So there's a series of beer mats that they've produced that have gone out, been distributed by people within the lab to pubs and other venues across the city. They've been running the roadshow to engage with students coming to the different Manchester universities during Welcome Week. And the person that I mentioned earlier that was dialed in to one of the previous events, Mark Donovan, who is the co-founder of the Denver Basic Income Pilot, actually came over and Louis and Alison hosted him in Manchester and got him in front of the GMCA, and he told loads of great, inspiring stories that have persuaded and engaged GMCA and Andy himself, and all of this stewarding has resulted in chalking up the massive win of seeing Andy put into his manifesto a pledge to do a UBI in Manchester, which is absolutely fantastic. I mentioned the work that had been done on some of the unions' work, so quite a lot of engagement in and around some of that areas of kind of adjacent possible things in UBI. And there's a flyer developed for that, which we've had printed to help resource people with the ability to start and have some of those conversations. And there's also been a suite of kind of cross-disciplinary papers published and featured on all sorts of blogs. Dave, I'm not going to be able to read out all of the stuff that you sent me, but it was a very impressive list of chapters published or being written, publications and research articles going out, some of which are captured here around modern welfare in the UK and reflections on the potential shortcomings of the current system. And a lot of those have been peer reviewed and are genuinely out there in the ether and the systems that get recognized and used for learning in all sorts of educational institutions for all sorts of different reasons, which is absolutely fantastic. And there's also been a number of those from the food lab going in that have been jointly written and papers that have gone in for BN and other initiatives as well, which is absolutely fantastic. And there's more of those to come. Um, Again, acknowledging the work that Louis led on around the general election. We ran a pledge campaign this year. We wrote to all of the candidates that were standing in the general election. And that work going forward will be part of an initiative that is MPs for UBI, inspired by the mayors for UBI in the US. There was some great work in across the country where members attended local hustings to ask questions. There was a pledge campaign done by Reinhardt and UBI Lab Leeds around the West Yorkshire mayoral pledge, and lots of really great engagement in that. That has resulted in us getting an invite to the Palace of Westminster to host a session, drop-in session, and educational session for MPs in the new year, which we're working with Neil Duncan Jordan as an MP to work that out and plan a session that's going to be an hour long that we'll do a load of follow-up from. And that is the year that seems to have flown us by, taking all sorts of fantastic UBI adjacent events from permaculture and sustainability, farming and financing, unions and poverty. And yeah, I think we all need to just yeah, take a moment and remember that although this work is hard and sometimes feels like it's not making the progress we would like it to, when you reflect back on it, it is actually a hell of a lot of progress and it is moving in the right directions and great work really is being done. So thank you all that are on the call here and that have contributed to making that possible.